Now, speaking of Canada, and speaking of Canada being infiltrated, not just by lefties, but by terrorists, potentially, foreign governments, Khalistani terrorist supporting adjacent entities, Chinese Communist Party commies, the parliamentary hearings into Russian disinformation, Russian interference in Canadian politics, because that's where the interference is coming from, not from the Chinese Communist Party or Khalistani Indian entities in Canadian government. No, it's Russia, 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 because that allows them to continue this bullshit narrative about the truckers having some adjacency to the Russians. You know that they had the parliamentary hearings where they subpoenaed Lauren Chen. They had the parliament, Lauren Chen came, pleaded basically the Canadian equivalent of the Fifth Amendment. I can't answer questions for reasons of potential self-incrimination if they're going to try indict Lauren Chen for whatever the reason. Okay. Lauren Southern was summoned and she kicked ass, and I covered that and put that on as much blast as possible because Lauren Chen is smart, educated, informed, and charismatic, which is exactly everything that the idiots asking her questions are not. But most recently, they either summoned or they're having their round 3, and they had some expert witnesses in this parliamentary hearing that was scheduled for yesterday, but it was cut short because of a fire alarm going off, in which the expert witnesses are a Canadian journalist by the name of Rachel Gilmore, who I've said is the Canadian equivalent of Taylor Lorenz, some professor of political science at an education institution in Canada, I'll get in a second, and a Finnish expert on Russian disinformation, and his name is Pekka Koljoniemi, who I'm following on Twitter, and I wouldn't mind having a discussion with him, but something tells me it won't happen. So they're having another round of this Russia investigation. It's the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen, but I pulled a couple of highlights, and then we have to see where this goes into the American side of things. Yeah, let's bring up Rachel Gilmore. Had some amazing insights in her. They only had their opening statements, and then a fire alarm got pulled or something. And if you're following me on Twitter or if you're in our local community, you've already seen this here.
In the documents the DOJ released in September in the US, we saw details from Russia's Good Old USA project and its guerrilla media campaign in the United States. Those documents show Russia identified existing sources of polarization to then exploit. The, quote, campaign topics they plan to focus on included stuff like what they called the, quote, threat of crime coming from people of color and immigrants, and, quote, risk of job loss for white Americans, and what they called, quote, privileges for people of color, perverts, and disabled.
I don't know where she's getting this from, but privileges. They could have ended at that. Privileges. We're not allowed complaining about privileges of a certain class and discrimination against another. Okay, but hold on.
So that gives you a sense of the kinds of divisions Russia focused on exacerbating. It's got a lot in common with what I would call the right-wing grifter sphere and what comes out of there, where people rail against immigration, attack diversity and inclusion.
Attack diversity and inclusion that's already been pulled back from all of these entities. What was it? And they might be pulling back from the American military, which might have been investing a little bit too much in diversity, equity, and inclusion to the point where they can't take down a freaking drone flying over. Okay, whatever. Complain about it. You're a Russian asset or a right-wing grifter sphere.
Pearl clutch about anti-white racism and opposed trans rights.
By the way, notice that pearl clutch about anti-white racism. Not that it doesn't exist, but fake outrage about it.
Like, those are the kinds of topics you hear from people like Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, and Lauren Southern.
And Viva Fry, and a bunch of Canadians, and a bunch of other people, because they are issues that deserve to be criticized. But if you do that, you're Russian.
And those are the same influencers who ended up on the payroll at Tenet Media, which Russia was allegedly funding to spread its talking points. If we accept the premise that Russia never influenced their editorial decisions, as these influencers claimed after the fact,
it would have been difficult to claim it before the fact when they didn't know and nobody knew. But okay, set that aside. Yeah, it didn't influence anything. And these are immensely successful people in the first place who, if they're going to license their content, they ain't going to do it for free. It's kind of an amazing thing, Rachel, when you have a product of quality, you don't give it away for free, and you don't fault people for not giving themselves away for free. And when you don't have a product of quality, you can't sell it because it's shit and nobody wants it, which might be why success has a way of leaving clues, Rachel. You might want to look at the Tim Pools of the world, of the Dave Rubins of the world, of the Lauren Southerns of the world. They didn't get famous or success by appealing to the crowd. They actually got it by being accurate, truthful, and on point, and relevant.
That implies these folks are so good at dividing and polarizing Western society that Russia likely saw it as a good investment to just fund them to make more of their organic content. Yikes.
Does she not understand how stupid that is? They were going to do it anyhow, and she thinks that Russia's funding them to continue doing what they were going to do anyhow. I was going to make a very politically incorrect joke, a self-deprecating one, but that doesn't make business sense, Rachel. If they're giving it away for free, or they're giving it away anyhow, why in the name of sweet, merciful hell would you pay them more to continue doing? Oh, because they needed a little extra incentive to continue doing what they've already been doing that has made them wildly successful. So let's throw a little more money at them. You know what would have made a lot more business sense? Don't give them a penny and just cut and repost their stuff, or at least amplify their stuff. Pay to amplify their stuff. Holy hell. Anyways, that's the genius opening statement, or at least a portion of it, from Rachel Gilmore. But I'm not only picking on Rachel Gilmore. I'm picking on her in particular. This guy, what was his name? No. This is a political science professor, dean at the Royal Military College. That's right, because I remember it wasn't Université de Montréal. I'm not going to play the whole thing. Just play a portion of this.
Je vais parler en français.
He's going to speak in French.
I will be speaking in French. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify before you today. It is reassuring to see how seriously the Public Safety and National Security Committee is taking the threat that Russian disinformation and influence operations are posing to Canadians, to our democracy, and to our society.
Our government has been infiltrated by China and India definitively. So much so, it's being kept secret, the identities of the politicians who have been infiltrated knowingly or unwittingly by China and India. And this guy is coming out. You also appreciate, like, he's an expert sitting next to the expert of Rachel Gilmore. What must this guy feel like? He must either be on par with Rachel, or he must be sitting there saying, how the hell did I end up on this panel? It goes on, by the way. But
the points I'm making today are my own points and do not represent the position of my employer or any organization. Applications enhancing Russian influence
listen to this.
Directly challenges and threatens authoritarian systems, as it shows why is Russia influencing the West.
Why?
For the Kremlin, like other authoritarian, undemocratic regimes, such as China, the sheer existence of democracies is a threat to its regime's survival. Countries like Canada show every day that repression, violence, censorship, and corruption we see in authoritarian regimes is not only unnecessary, but that it is harmful.
Stop. The violence, repression that we see in authoritarian regimes. Can someone please supercut that to Justin Trudeau sending his stormtroopers to beat the ever-loving piss out of peaceful Ottawa protesters? The censorship via legislation, the violence that they imposed on those peaceful protesters, freezing of bank accounts. This guy is unironically coming out and saying that the violence, authoritarianism, we show them that it's not necessary. Justin Trudeau has shown Russia they're taking notes as to how to implement authoritarianism and violence as demonstrated by Justin Trudeau.
Every day that repression, violence, censorship, and corruption we see in authoritarian regimes is not only unnecessary, but that it is harmful and fundamentally not in the interest of citizens. Russian citizens cannot compete with Westerners, neither in terms of living conditions, economic development, political stability, or general happiness of the people.
All right, let's stop there. We don't need to hear any more of this garbage. They can't compete, eh? Wait until you hear this, guys. I mean, this one actually just broke before I went live, or pretty close to. You got to hear this. You got to hear this. What they've turned Canada into. They can't compete. Our government is convincing people that we should be living in trailers.
Really cool buildings that I'm starting to see pop up.
Cool buildings
right across
popping
the
up
country.
Across Canada. Trailers, by the way. Nothing wrong with
I tend
them.
to see the most when I'm visiting communities who embrace unique solutions to the housing crisis is when families are trying to find a home for aging parents who have unique accessibility needs, for families who have a student who wants to live nearby if they're going to college or university, or for people who are looking to earn a little bit extra income on the side. I visited not too long ago a family in my own community. It was Art and Joan in Hammonds Plains. They've been living in my own province, rather. They've been living in the same neighborhood for 57 years, where they raised their own family. Joan ran into certain concerns that required more accessible upgrades to their home in order to continue to live in the community where they want it to remain. Over the years, their daughter, Deborah, now an adult, decided to raise her own family just down the street, literally.
Listen to this.
And when they were looking for that more accessible option, they actually approached their daughter, Deborah, and said, is there any chance we could actually build a spot in your backyard? And that's exactly what they've done. They worked with a company called Sprout based in Nova Scotia, who's manufacturing these backyard suites or accessory dwelling units, if you'll use lingo.
Suites. Or if you want to use the lingo, backyard suites.
Build a spot in your backyard. And that's exactly what they've done. They worked with a company called Sprout based in Nova Scotia, who's manufacturing these backyard suites or accessory dwelling units.
Accessory dwelling units, trailer homes. If that, and I'm not saying this is an elitist prick, like judgmentally. I'm just saying that, generally speaking, the sign of a successful country is not the fact that people are building trailer homes in the backyards of their family members. That's not the sign of a successful, thriving country that other countries are going to aspire to be. They're talking about building trailer homes on properties of other family members, assuming it's even allowed by the bylaws, which I suspect it wouldn't be in many cases. But congratulations, that expert saying, oh God, Russia's just looking at Canada and saying, I wish we could be more like them. I wish mom and pops could live in a trailer in my backyard because of a housing crisis, because we've let in 500,000 immigrants a year into a country that can't handle it. And now we've got a healthcare issue that has been lasting decades, a housing crisis that's lasted a decade, but at least you can live in a trailer in the backyard of your family member.
If you'll use lingo. And what they ended up with is a beautiful space, looks up onto a little forested area, literally steps away from their daughter in the same neighborhood where they grew up. What you see is an energy-efficient design that keeps the monthly costs low. It has all the accessibility features they need. And what's most important for them is they get to be close to their daughter and to her family. What's interesting is the opportunity not only to be next to their grandkids in their neighborhood.
You said that.
Is the house down the street has been freed up for another family to move in. When you see this additional supply added, it creates a cascading effect that frees up more existing housing stock for families to move into communities where the stock already exists. If you add a fairly quick construction methodology with these new kinds of buildings, the change today is.
I have to hear the rest of this. I'm sorry.
Really important because it reflects feedback that we've heard from stakeholders out there who are in the business of building these things, including families who want to add a new building to their property to provide housing for typically a loved one, but not necessarily.
So we'll free up some property if you empty that house and put them in a trailer in the back of your house. And oh, by the way, if you don't have any family to do that to, well, we can do that with some immigrants. I mean, why not? That's the next logical step. By the way, yeah, Canada is the jealousy of Russia, you dumbasses, in terms of its success and in terms of its politics and its freedom. Putin, he might freeze bank accounts. He might unleash his police to beat the shit out of peaceful protesters. He might. One thing is for certain, I know Justin Trudeau has done that. Holy hell. There was another expert who came out to talk during this Russian hearing, and he's the Finnish expert. I tagged him. Yes, Pekki Kallioiniemi, and listen to what he has to say before the fire alarm.
Mr. Kallioiniemi, to make an opening statement of up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
He only gets 2 minutes and 20 seconds before.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to appear before you today.
I just want to say one thing. That mustache is like 1 inch on both sides away from being very problematic. Especially with that haircut. I mean, dude, I'm sorry. You just like trim that and keep that hair. Dude, you got a problem. It's amazing. What a difference an inch of hair on both sides makes. From totally unacceptable to perfectly acceptable. Okay, fine. Sorry, I've been saving that joke for a long time.
So my name is Pekka Kallioiniemi. I'm a Finnish expert on social media and disinformation. And in recent years, I have mainly focused on Russian online disinformation in a series titled Vatnik Soup. It's safe to say that during the last 10 years, Russian online influence operations have been the most effective in the world. And the Kremlin has attempted to interfere with elections and referendums around the world. The latest example is the massive social media campaign that Russia ran before the presidential elections in Romania. An unknown pro-Kremlin anti-NATO candidate gained over 20% of the total vote during the first round, only by campaigning on TikTok.
And this is
The
unacceptable.
whole elections were eventually annulled
They were
due to the
annulled.
massive Russian interference campaign exposed by Romanian intelligence agencies. In many countries,
Pause. Do you understand what he just, I'm choking on his bullshit. Do you understand what he just said? I didn't hear about this story. Now I'm going to put it on as much blast as humanly possible and hope that I can get Kalin Georgescu to come on to talk about it. They annulled the elections in Romania, the first round of the presidential elections. And contrary to what Pekki said here, not because they proved any Russian interference, but because intelligence leaked documents alleging Russian interference, and the Constitutional Court in Romania annulled the election because a far-right unknown candidate, anti-NATO, because Romania is a NATO member, broke out of nowhere to win the first round of the presidential elections and go to the second round with someone else who now has to go back and redo her campaign because they've annulled the election. Understand that.
Russians hire and manipulate people to spread false narratives online, and Canada is not an exception. There are several prominent figures parroting Kremlin viewpoints regarding, for example, Ukraine and Syria.
Okay, so if you think that there was a false flag in Syria with the gas attacks, and if you think that we shouldn't be pissing away our money with the corrupt country of Ukraine, paid or not, you're parroting Russian propaganda. If you criticize 2S LGBTQIA plus policy, you're a Russian apologist. If you complain about immigration or rampant crime, you're a Putin agent. If you complain about the fact that in Brampton they're putting out police videos in Hindi, in a language that is not French or English, you're a Putin propagandist.
Tenet Media was already mentioned previously, but there are also several academics, journalists, and other social media personalities who spread Russia's lies online.
I'm just waiting for my name to be mentioned. I didn't get mentioned. I feel kind of ignored, actually.
Some of them are motivated by money, others by ideology or their ego.
Motivated by ideology means you believe what you're saying. Some of them are motivated because they believe in what they're saying, and this is unacceptable, and we have to annul elections in which we allege that people are saying things because that Russia is saying as well.
Some may even have become victims of Russian blackmail, compromat.
Now we know damn well what this guy's up to.
And this is how Russia usually operates. They hide the origin of the message. It's also the reason why their messaging is so effective. They have this ability to make it seem organic and local. Of course, all this will be, and to some degree already is, supercharged with the use of AI. After February of 2022, Russia's main goal with their influence operations has been to stop any kind of military aid to Ukraine. Long term, they also try to destabilize Western societies, undermine trust in democratic institutions, and weaken adversaries through division and confusion. The rationale behind this is that any...
Sorry, sir, we're going to suspend?
That's it. Done. Fire alarm. So by the way, if you believe any of these things and you put them online and people relate to them, you're all victims of Russian propaganda. And we're going to annul the election. Did you understand they annulled the election in Romania? It's wild. Annulled. Because the outgoing president who's reached the end of his term in Romania, who now gets to sit in his position of president until they figure the election out and find his replacement, annulled the election after having released declassified documents arguing that Russia allegedly influenced TikTok videos, and that's how this far-right, unknown, anti-NATO candidate won. Not that Romanians didn't actually vote or that the votes were fraudulent. They voted, but they were influenced by the wrong information. And you think that they're not going to use this? We've got this guy, Pekko Källinen, as an expert pushing this shit in Canada. You think that Justin Trudeau's not going to try to do something similar? Oh shit! Did Pierre Poilievre win? No, we got to call a new election. Can't have that. You had a good TikTok campaign. That's what's coming. Oh, and by the way, where is it? Hold on. You know who's behind all of this, because it all comes back. It all comes back to not America in the broad sense, the Biden administration and the deep state apparatus in America. Listen to this. This is from the Monocle Daily. I was listening to podcasts today to try to make sure I understood what's going on in Romania, and I've just scratched the surface.
So is the contention that the votes cast for Kalin Georgescu were bogus, that there was something done to the counting process or the voting process, or are they more concerned about the misinformation / disinformation influence operations that were run?
No, I don't think that they say that the counting process, there was interference in that. It was the way that he benefited from a massive TikTok campaign. There'd been many hundreds of dormant accounts, which was suddenly reactivated 2 weeks before the elections. There's the fact that he declared, even though he had obviously an extremely successful campaign, he declared zero spending. And they said the way that his campaign had been run on TikTok had the hallmark of a foreign actor, which they suggested was the Kremlin. In fact, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said it was Russian interference. He said that yesterday.
It had the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. The hallmarks. I'm surprised they didn't actually use the same word. The earmark of Russian disinformation or a Russian information campaign. And it links back to Blinken. That does it, peeps. That's our show. It goes back to Blinken. Maidan 2.0 is what was just pulled off in Romania. If anybody has an in with Georgescu. Georgescu, yeah. Just, I tweeted out, go share my tweet, tag him. I'd love to have him on to put this on blast. It is a Maidan coup 2.0. Why? Romania is a NATO member. They've got a very strong military base. I want to say, what's the sea that's right next to Romania? Sea next to Romania. The Black Sea, sorry. They've got a very important military base there. Can't have someone getting elected in a country and maybe like breaking off from NATO. Maybe putting the brake pads on NATO. No, Antony Blinken and the deep state apparatus will not let that happen. This is Maidan 2.0. We're witnessing it right now.